So the app is called ExtraFi, and what we're going to get into here is leverage yield farming. And so what that means in general is that you are going to deposit usually half of the LP in either of the tokens, and then you're going to borrow the other half of these tokens. And then you can leverage, and there are a lot of different levers that you can pull to leverage your position to be either short or long or sort of delta neutral. And so we're going to go over what some of those options are and like how to digest this, because if you look at the screen right here, there's a lot of information here. And so let's try and understand what we're actually doing. So you have three options. One is, do you want to just farm rewards and kind of be sort of delta neutral? Or are you long, usually the risk on asset? Or are you short the risk on asset? And so first you have to pick between these three things. And I think this leverage yield farming is really the best when you do it with assets that are not extremely volatile and also that are paired with USDC. It's like much easier to measure your risk, and also with high incentives. And so that's a combination I look for when I'm identifying good LPs for leverage yield farming. And then of course you want the incentives to last a long time. So I don't actually know where these incentives are coming from, but when you're doing your due diligence for entering a DeFi position, look for where these fees are coming from. They might be swap fees, which would be great. If they're not swap fees, then look at how long the incentive plan is for these incentives. But right now, the base APR about 16%. Let's say I want to do the delta neutral, like sort of delta neutral strategy. Okay, so that means that I probably want exposure to USDC and I don't care about exposure to Ethereum. So I'm going to assume I have $1,000 of USDC that I'm ready to deploy in this LP. What I'm going to do with the other half of this LP, because you need to, when you're LPing, you need both sides. I'm going to borrow the Ethereum half. And so that is what is going on here when, you can pick templates. This is actually really nice. There's a lot of information here, but I like lots of data here. So we're going to do this neutral 2x. This is basically what we're setting up. So you can just click on it and it pre-fills it for you. What this is doing is it's going to borrow the same amount of dollars worth of Ethereum as your USDC deposit. And so that's 2x means your position is now twice as big as it was before. So you had $1,000 of USDC and now you're adding $1,000 of ETH. But you're like, well, where does that ETH just come from? Well, you have to borrow it. And so what this app is doing in the background is it's using your USDC as collateral and borrowing $1,000 of ETH. So this effectively allows you to farm on twice as much capital as you initially deposited. But of course, there are risks and restrictions that you need to be aware of. So that's what we're going to talk about next. So first of all, you should be curious about what the borrowing rate is for Ethereum, because you're going to borrow ETH, your USDC as collateral. It says here 9% is what you're paying to borrow ETH. And that's why it looks like if you scroll up here, it's showing you what your new rate for leverage yield farming is. The base rate was 16%. So you're like, well, 16%, I just put in $2,000 on my $1,000. I should now double that. But no, because you need to remove the cost of which you're borrowing Ethereum. So that's what they did this math for you here. You get the 31% minus the borrowing rate. So now you've upped your farming rate from 16% to 22%. So that's pretty nice. Okay, so this chart, we're going to go on to this P&L simulation. Let's check it out. On the y-axis is your P&L. So this is how much you're making. And then on the x-axis is the price of wrapped ETH in USDC. So this is why I said before, it's much easier when you're doing this leverage yield farming against USDC, because it's much easier for you to think about the risks. Okay, so this is the current price of ETH, 3,500 about. And this is what will happen to your LP if the price of ETH changes. The price of USDC will stay the same. So if ETH goes up, you're actually losing money. This dotted line here is your break even. Right now, as you open the LP, let's assume you've collected 0 rewards from your LP because no time has passed. 1 block later, Ethereum is worth $5,000. Let's just say you're actually going to be down quite a bit. You're going to be down, it's so tiny, 6%. You're going to lose 6% on your total, on your collateral. And you're like, why? Because that's basically impermanent loss is affecting your LP. As Ethereum increases in price, the LP, in order to stay balanced, Ethereum goes up, and so it's selling ETH in order to rebalance the pool. Arbitrageurs are coming in, and you're losing money. Okay, so as Ethereum goes higher and higher, you are going to be losing more and more to impermanent loss. And that's why I said I like to do this with assets I know are not so volatile, because if Ethereum does a 2x, you're going to be down 16%. It's like quite a bit. If you look at the APR, that's almost a whole year of farming rewards that you're forfeiting. And the same thing if Ethereum goes down. It's a little different curve because of how this works, because you're borrowing Ethereum. So technically, as Ethereum goes down in value, how much you need to pay back also reduces. But then there's also the impermanent loss in the other direction. So that's why this curve looks different. And of course, if Ethereum goes to zero, your LP will be worthless. And so you have a total loss of your LP. And so that's why this left side is trending towards zero and the right side is just trending downward. And so this UI is really cool though, because it allows you to simulate how many days are you going to be in this LP, because that's the other important factor. Remember, I said you want the highest yielding LP for the low volatility tokens. So 22% APY, let's say we're in this for 1 month. So now after 1 month, we've earned about 2% in rewards. And assuming that Ethereum has not moved pricing at all, then yeah, look at this. We're up about 2% in interest because Ethereum has not moved. However, if we go on either side, so let's say Ethereum goes up to, what is this? If Ethereum goes up to 4,500, at 30 days, we are break even. So you could be in this pool for 1 month and earn nothing if Ethereum goes up to 4,600. This is the risk of leverage yield farming. I would say like one of the largest risks of this is that you enter an LP and the price just starts swinging wildly and you don't have enough time to in the LP to recoup your losses. And again, I think that's not crazy, 4,700, but that's kind of near the recent highs. And so if that happens in a month, you'll earn nothing. Same thing in the other direction. If it goes down to like 2,000, I think that's very unlikely within the next month, but you'll be down almost 4% if it happens within the next 30 days. So this is a cool app. I really like this curve. I think it's really useful for helping to understand these dynamics. If you go back to pseudo delta neutral, you can see at 2x, there's no liquidation right here, because as your assets move, they're still being like used as collateral against each other. And so there's not really a liquidation risk. However, if you go pump this up to 3x and eventually 4x, you'll start to see that there is a liquidation threshold. And so you stand to gain more from the total APR. This starts to go up a little bit. I would say not even worth it though, because look at 4x for the pseudo delta neutral, we're only earning about 28% APY, whereas for the 2x, we're earning 22%, and there's very, very little risk of liquidation. So these are all the factors that I consider with leverage farming, and I'll stop there.